Hello, Chris Yates here with Huddle Productions in the Huddle with Antonio Williams, a former NBA scout, and also ESPN and also Nike. NBA playoffs, man, they're back. How exciting is that? Obviously, we're in the Dallas area, so we're going to focus on the Mavericks and Luka. Let's get right into it. Luka, his first NBA playoff game ever. He wasn't intimidated, was he?
No, not at all. And honestly, I didn't expect him to be because, here's a player that not only has he had an immense amount of success coming into the NBA, and he's also in his second year in the discussion for most improved player as well as MVP. So with him being in that discussion, showing that growth from year one to year two, I'm not surprised by that. And the other thing is, he had a lot of success in the ACB, Chris, which is the for all of our hoop fam that's joining that may not be familiar, it's the second best professional basketball league in the world behind the NBA. So he was MVP in that league. So he's played at a high level, and that league also has former NBA players as well. So I'm not surprised at all. I didn't think that there would be as much of a learning curve for him, and had a great showing yesterday.
It's amazing to me. Every time we hear Luka Doncic, it's always like, oh my gosh, he sets a new record. He sets a new record. So he set a record for most points ever in NBA history. History. We're talking Larry Bird, Magic Johnson, Michael Jordan had never done this. Most points in his first NBA playoff game with 42 points. How impressive is that? I mean, you're saying he's used to it, but still, those are some big names to uphold right there.
No, for sure. No, he is an amazing player. And also on his team, he is very important to what they do. Everything sort of flows through him as well. So you have those opportunities to really be able to do that also. But again, there's a couple of things here because one, his skill level, that's number one. So when you have that skill level, it's easy to make that transition because you can rely on those skills. One of the things I like to say, Chris, is being native to the platform. So that success is native to him because he's skillful. That's the first thing. The other thing as well is, of course, that experience helps in playing in those big games and playing against former NBA players. So that learning curve isn't as steep as it would be for a player that's coming from Europe that may not have experience in high level competition in very tense moments as well. And the third thing is his body, because he's strong enough. So he doesn't have to concede. Most players, when they come to the NBA, with the exception of a LeBron James, a Zion Williamson, a Shaquille O'Neal, a Luka Doncic as well, most players, when they come to the NBA, one of the things that's expected is, okay, you're going to have to get stronger. So you have to concede a little bit because you don't have the physical strength to compete with grown men. Well, Luka's body, if you look at him, he's naturally strong. In fact, if there's a knock on him, one of the things that you can say is he has to get in better shape. But he's naturally strong. So with that being said, he doesn't have to concede when people get physical with him.
Right. And now he did have 11 turnovers, so he is a little sloppy with the ball. But I think you'd probably still take that as a coach and an NBA scout, correct?
No question. And one of the things, Chris, both of us love football, right? So when you look at one of the things, when you look at, say you look at a quarterback that is passing the ball as much as he's passing the ball, Peyton Manning comes to mind, right? Especially when you look at his rookie season when he led the league in interceptions, right? When you are putting the ball in a guy's hands that much and asking him to do that much, you're going to see some turnovers. And especially when you face Kawhi Leonard and Paul George, two of the better wing defenders that we have in the NBA.
That's the thing, too. He scored 42 points, not against an average team. They're a good defensive team, the Clippers, correct?
No question. They're a really good defensive team. Markieff Morris, Marcus Morris is guarding him as well. And I want to touch on Marcus a little bit more when we talk about Luka. But when you look at that, being guarded by Marcus Morris, being guarded by Paul George, being guarded by Kawhi, what happens is you are facing your high-level output, high-level usage against some of the better wing defenders, or in the case of Marcus Morris, he's a little bit versatile. He can go out on the wing. He can also defend in the post. He's strong enough to do that. So with that being said, Luka is facing a lot of defensive pressure, and teams are focusing all of their defensive pressure on him. And so with that being said, when you face that team, and you have that high of a usage rate, it's probably expected that you're going to have some turnovers. That's for sure.
And the thing also as well is we're talking about the LA Clippers, Los Angeles Clippers. I mean, a lot of people are favoring them to win the NBA championship, even over the Lakers. So the Mavericks have got a first round that's a really brutal first round.
Yeah.
But for them, I mean, it's going to be tough to get out of this round. But how important is it for young players like him to play in the playoffs? Do you think it's important, or do you think it's just like the regular season?
No, it's very important, Chris. I'll say this. So I've talked about this, Hoop Fam, I've talked about this a lot. So people will always ask when you have a team, and this isn't a 1 versus 8 matchup, but when there's a 1 versus 8, Joe Q Public will always say, if you're an 8 seed and you're a young team, why are you trying to make the playoffs when you're probably going to get beat in the first round? In some cases, you may get swept in the first round. Why are you doing that? Well, here's why you do that instead of, quote unquote, collecting lottery picks.
Right.
Look at the Toronto Raptors, for example. And I talk about this a lot. Fred VanVleet, Pascal Siakam, OG Anunoby was guarding LeBron James in the playoffs for the Raptors when he was on an island by himself, Chris, as a rookie, right? So what happens is when you have seen activated, LeBron talks about zero dark 23, right? When he gets in playoff mode.
Right.
When you're facing that, once you face that, Chris, you've seen everything there is to see in the NBA.
So you need this experience.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because then once you get that experience, now it's, you know what? I've seen everything there is to see in the NBA. I can build on that now. So now you look at Fred VanVleet, you look at Pascal Siakam. When Kawhi Leonard, the aforementioned Kawhi, was in Toronto last year, those guys contributed heavily to that championship run because they were ready, because they had been in those moments before Kawhi showed up. So yeah, it's very important for young players to get that experience. And you don't want that, Chris. So if you look at LeBron, you look at Michael Jordan, those guys were ready to win their championships in their 7th season. You don't want them in their 5th and 6th and 7th seasons. That's the first time they've ever been to the playoffs.
Right. We talked about this. Now, we're talking with Antonio Williams, a former NBA scout, so he knows a lot about this. We had talked during the Jordan documentary, and they talked about that, where he got beat up during the playoffs, and it helped him go through the pains of losing, but it helped him become the champion he was. So maybe this would be good for the Mavericks and this young team.
Absolutely. And for him, for Porzingis as well, these are the most meaningful games that he's ever played in as a professional. One of the things that I talked about a lot, Chris, on when I was having my own shows or talking with other people, one of the things I talked about even before we started was my former team, the Phoenix Suns. How important these play-in games were for one Devin Booker, for DeAndre Ayton, for Devin Booker in particular. These are the most important professional games that he's played in his career. And so for him to go through that, and then for them to win all those games when all of those teams that they played against were trying to win those games, right? It is very, very important. So now it's even, okay, they go 8-0. They didn't make the play-in round, but they have something to build on for next year.
Yeah. Right?
So it's very important for all of these young players to get that experience as much as possible.
Not to talk about the game too much, because we want to focus on the future for this team. But the Porzingis ejection, come on. I mean, I'm old school. I remember the Bad Boys and the Pistons.
Right.
Come on, throw them out for that. What do you think of that?
No, it's, Chris, I get it that they are trying to make basketball as accessible to everybody, and they don't want it to be, quote unquote, visually arresting in that regard, and make it like hockey where fighting is sort of part of the game. I know that they don't want to make it that way, but at the same time, especially it's one thing if you have a fist swing when you're objecting or call, when you're objecting to call in the regular season. I'm against that, but again, it's one thing to do that in in the regular season. It's another thing in the playoffs when the Mavericks have a chance to win this game.
They really, do you think they would have been a difference maker in that game?
Absolutely. Porzingis only played 20 minutes. Absolutely. Just the fact that he's on the floor, right? And as the way that he's been playing as not only a person that is stretching the floor as a shooter, and he's actually starting to find his groove. And that kind of started right when we had the suspension in play. He started to find his groove, and then he's played well in the bubble as well. Second team all bubble, right? And so he's played well. But the other thing that he offers the Mavericks as well, when you have guys that the Clippers have in Kawhi and Paul George and Lou Williams that can fabricate offense, get to the rim, etc., you need some rim protection. And Porzingis offers that rim protection. And for him, this experience is important as well, because one of the things he has to get better at, if you're watching the game, he's got to get better in defending the pick and roll, right? Yeah. And that's hard for a 7-footer because they play very upright. But he has enough mobility and foot speed to get down in the stance and guard that. And it's one thing to see that in the regular season, Chris. It's another thing to see that in the playoffs, right? Yeah. So this playoff experience is very important to him. And, just like with Luka, if you watch the transition and what's next for him, this is important because oftentimes what the Mavs do, Chris, is they will try and hide Luka defensively. They'll have him guard a front court player that's not really a scorer. That's what they do on defense, right? And I'm saying that for a reason, because they can't do that against the Clippers because he has to guard Marcus Morris, who is a threat offensively. So they force Luka to play both ends of the floor, right? Okay. So that's very important. So for him, and on offense, that next sort of step, that transition that he needs to do, for a guy that shoots the ball so well, Chris, he's only shooting 28% from three. Wow. Right? Yeah. So for a guy that has the technique that he has and has the mechanics, he should be shooting much higher than 28%. Well, part of the reason why he's shooting 28%, Chris, is because when he can't get past guys, he will opt for a difficult three. And sometimes he makes them, but oftentimes he will miss them. And so his transition, for a guy that's so strong and he has so much skill, he's got to slow the game down and use that strength and get guys. One of the things that we like to say, Chris, is you get a guy in jail. What that means is you get him on your hip and you punish him. That's what Luka's got to do. That's the next transition for him as a great player. Okay.
A few more questions and then we'll let you roll. Antonio Williams, former NBA scout with ESPN, really knowledgeable in basketball. Thank you for being on.
Thank you for having me.
How far away? I mean, okay, first off, are they going to win one game against the Clippers? Or just a sweep?
I think they can win a game, but what it'll come down to?
Series?
I don't think they'll win the series. No. So me personally, I'm a Laker. I want the Lakers to win, but I feel like the Clippers are going to win this and win the championship. I do. So, but having said that, I do think they'll get a win. But in order for them to get the win, it's not really about Porzingis and Luka, because I think those guys are going to do what they're going to do. If you look at the games in the bubble, first thing they have to do is they have to defend better, because they haven't defended well in the bubble at all. They've given up a ton of points in the bubble. That's the first thing. And the second thing they'll have to do is, if you look at the games that they won in the bubble, albeit they gave up a lot of points, if you look at the games that they've won in the bubble, Chris, we call him Dodo, affectionately known as Dodo. Dorian Finney-Smith has to play well. In the games that they won in the bubble, he was 27-11 and 16-16. He's got to play well. Maxi Kleber has to play well if they're going to win. Trey Burke has to play well if they're going to win. So it's not really about, because I expect now, am I expecting Luka to have 42 every game? No, right? But having said that, I expect Luka and Porzingis to be the great players that they are. If the Mavs are going to win, they have to defend, and those other guys have to step up.
Okay, last question. As an NBA scout, have you ever seen a kid, 21 years old, like this, and where would you compare him?
I think again the sky is the limit for him. One of the things is it's one thing to come in the league with a lot of hype. It's another thing to deliver on that hype, and he's delivered on it. He's delivered on it every step of the way. Another guy that you can say that's delivered on it as well is a LeBron James. He's delivered on the hype,
right
when he came in. So with that being said, Chris, like I love what I see. Again, with his skills give him a lot of versatility. So what does that mean, Chris? He can play with other great players. So even though he has a high usage rate, I expect as the Mavericks continue to upgrade their roster, his scoring will actually go down. Right? But his impact on the game will remain the same, because now he's able to be even more creative because they're playing with other scorers, because he can do that because he's so versatile. From a skill standpoint, I can get off the ball and make a shot. I can fabricate offense while I'm on the ball. I can do that. So with that being said, I think what Luka will do is, if you watch other players, say they get another player that can do some things in the post. And I know Porzingis stretches the floor, but say they get another guy that can score down low as well. Luka, that guy, if they got another guy, say, that scores down low as well, that guy doesn't have to change his game for Luka, because Luka can do other things. It's similar to if you put it in terms of, say, Kobe Bryant, and I say this for a reason. Kobe Bryant won titles with 3 dominant post players: the great Shaquille O'Neal, the great Pau Gasol, and people forget this. Before he was injured, Andrew Bynum was an NBA All-Star.
Right.
And Chris, those guys did not have to alter their games to play with Kobe. They didn't have to move out of the paint to play with Kobe, because he was skilled enough to be able to operate from all 3 levels on the floor and not force those guys to get out of the way so he can be effective. And I think Luka can do the same thing.
So for Dallas Maverick fans, last point, do you think they will win an NBA championship with this kid?
If they continue to upgrade that roster, I think they can.
How many players away do you think they are?
I would say they are 1 or 2.
Okay.
If they can continue to upgrade in the starting lineup, and then some of those guys that are contributing on the bench, they actually move to their more natural bench role. Instead of starting. And then you move them to their bench roles. And then now, because what makes the Clippers so dangerous is, yes, they have their star power, but they're deep. That's what makes them so dangerous. They're so deep. Another team that's deep that had played in an amazing game yesterday, the Denver Nuggets. Yeah. They're super deep as well. So that's the championship equation. When you have your great players and you add depth to that, that's the championship equation.
Antonio Williams, great having you on. Always great insight. Thank you so much. We'll continue to talk during the NBA playoffs.
Absolutely. I appreciate you, Chris. Let's keep watching this. And this is awesome. I was just watching the Mavs. I was just watching Milwaukee and Orlando, and I'm parked on my couch all day watching the WNBA and the NBA playoffs.
Sports is back. We needed this.
No question.